Alright, what's up, guys? This is Zixa here with DMV Drakes. I'm also here with my boy Kaze. We got a second place finish at the B4G tournament last Wednesday, excuse me. And he's going to explain his Dexdorugoramon deck that he
Yep.
took second place with. So if you would like, he's here too. I'm not just late.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
of
okay.
course.
Say hi. Say hi to YouTube.
Hey, how's it going, YouTube?
Yeah.
So, just like our team leader said, this is the Dexdorugoramon list that I played in the B4G tournament, and it's basically most of it is the essential like Black X antibody toolkit. We're gonna have Dorumon to where whenever we slide things under, we gain a memory, and it's also a searcher, Ryudomon, and that entire line. And so I think the main things about this is that number one, it's very fun to see your opponents react to you hatching Dorumon, thinking you're playing Alphamon, but really you're playing the fun version of it. But number two, this really does function as a pretty good OTK potential deck because the boss monster essentially of this entire deck, which we'll go over later, can get a lot of checks thanks to Dexdorugoramon. But just starting out with the rookies, we're only going with 11 of them because all of them are essentially just card advantage. So I mentioned Dorumon earlier. You'll reveal the top three. You could get any X antibody card or a Coda Tamer, which is essentially our memory setter. And you can just grab both of them if you actually reveal both. And then on top of that, whenever he's actually in play and under something, as I'm pretty sure everyone knows, when you have an effect that places a card underneath the stack, you'll gain a memory so you can, keep memory control and everything that way. And then the second Dorumon that we're playing, this one is more so just on play instead of actually searching. You get to trash one card with X antibody and then draw two. This is really good because within this entire deck, one of the main goals is to cheat Dexmon or Death Xmon into play off of Dexdorugoramon dying. And so this Dorumon helps actually fuel that strategy while also getting us card advantage. The last rookie, there's only going to be 3 Ryudomons, not going with 4 just for deck space, for certain decisions that you'll see later on. But Ryudomon is essentially another searcher, and while the inheritable didn't really come into play all that much, there are very niche scenarios where it's actually good to have the decoy black. So if I have a Dexdorugoramon stack with this, let's say, and I need it to die because I need to get a Dexmon into play, and let's say it swings and hits Gaia Force and the opponent targets another X antibody Digimon in play, you could easily just decoy black, pop the Dexdorugoramon, and, do your shenanigans from there. Moving on to the champions, this is going to be pretty simple and straightforward. Dorugamon and Dexdorugamon. Basically, Dorugamon is, of course, just a blocker so long as you have X antibody underneath or another separate X antibody Digimon in play, which is almost always going to be the case. And, of course, its inheritable is always good in terms of just being able to swing over things and, of course, in turn, not being swung over since you get the DP boost during all of your turns. But I think the real engine of the deck begins once you actually go into Dexdorugamon. So Dexdorugamon, when digivolving, you can easily just digivolve for free over Dorugamon, of course, but it allows you to trash any card with Dex in its name or with X antibody in its traits to gain a memory. So essentially, you're basically cheating on memory, right? Because you digivolve into a Digimon and gain memory instead of losing it. But what's more is that so long as it's over Dorugamon, it'll also give something blocker and retaliation until the end of your opponent's turn. Not just itself, but it could give another thing blocker retaliation. So you could either use it on itself to make sure that you're still a blocker, or, I don't know, let's say if you had another rookie in play and you need to just swing into a suspended Mega on your opponent's board, you could give that retaliation, swing, and then delete that Mon. And then, let's see, so for the other 2 champions, we have just a one of each, Genryumon and Grumblemon. For Genryumon, I added Genryu just in case you're in a situation where you need to kind of pivot to be a little more defensive with your level 5 or 6, because having that blocker inheritable when you don't have a Dexdorugamon or just any Dorugamon to actually give you blocker has come in clutch quite a bit. Usually, every time I see it, I end up it's in a situation where I need it, which is why we only run it as a one of. As for Grumblemon, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's just your hybrid for game. Nothing to overthink there. And then for the level 5s, we're only running 8. This is just Dorugoramon, the card that's about to be restricted for a reason. When you Digivolve, you not only get to slide something underneath it, and if that's Dorumon or you already had a Dorumon in the stack, a lot of times this usually just costs 2 to Digivolve into. And then, of course, you also get the protection from being deleted outside of battle, and you can't have your DP lessened. So basically, Sunrise Buster can't really hit this thing, and, just yellow removal in general just hates it. But the main thing about Dorugoramon that allows us to kind of have OTK potential is it's inheritable for just that security check +1. Because you can just, put Dorugray underneath itself and then start going in from there. For Dexdorugoramon, this I definitely love this card because unlike Dexdorugamon, it doesn't Digivolve for 0 over Dorugray, it Digivolves for 1, but even then, you can just gain that back by trashing something with Dex in its name or X anybody in its traits to gain 1 memory. So it's really going to cost 3 more often than not. And then on top of that, so long as it Digivolve from the trash or it's Digivolving over a Dorugoramon, you could also pop a Digimon with that's level 4 or lower. So you can pop memory blockers and things like that might stop you from gaining memory. And since Dorugoramon's inheritable is very important to the deck, this pretty much automatically puts that online just for 1 memory essentially, or 0 basically, or 0 because you basically gain the memory back. And then so that's the level 5s. Now in terms of the level 6 Dorugoramon, this is where things start to get scary for your opponent because number 1, for each card with X antibody in its type within the Digivolution cards of this Digimon, it gets extra DP plus 1k. So essentially a regular stack for any other Digimon, you'll have your 5, your 4, your 3, and an egg. So it's like, okay, well that's plus 4k DP, but since it's an X antibody deck and you likely slid something underneath thanks to Dorugray, that's another source, that's plus 5. But then, of course, if you have the Dexdorugamon and Dexdorugoramon, that's 2 more sources, plus 7. And then, of course, when he attacks, you could actually place another thing underneath with X antibody and traits from your hand. So then that's probably up to 8 sources. And when you get to that point, you could delete up to 2 of your opponent's Digimon with play costs less than or equal to, the number of Digivolution cards you have. So being able to consistently pop something with a play cost of 8 or less was very useful for the deck. And then for the DP boosting, that'll usually put you at 19k, but with Dorugamon's inheritable, it's very easy to just swing for 20k DP with about 2 to 3 checks if you have 2 Dorugramons underneath. So things could spin out of hand really well in terms of your own tempo and everything. And then that it doesn't end there because now we have Dexdorugoramon. So long as it's over Dorugoramon, you could Digivolve into this guy for just 2 memory. And then so long as he Digivolved from the trash or Digivolved over Dorugoramon, you basically delete all of your opponent's Digimon of the lowest level. So if your opponent has just 1 Digimon in play, it's definitely dead. And Dorugoramon himself, more often than not, pops all of the lowest level things anyways, because he can pop on an average of things from 7 to 8 play costs, just leaving the higher cost Digimon if your opponent has multiple things in play. And then since the DP is a little higher, it's 13k at base, usually Dexdorugoramon is swinging for 14k thanks to Dorugamon. But the main thing about Dexdorugoramon is the on deletion effect, and this is probably the reason why you want a lot of things with Dex in its name in your discard pile. So on deletion, you could play a level 3 purple or black Digimon from your trash without playing its memory cost. I mean, that's fine, but the main thing about it is that if you have 5 or more cards with Dex in its name in the trash, you could just play an entire Dexmon from your trash for free without paying its memory cost. And I'm pretty sure if you've been playing Digimon for a while in this meta, you already know about Dexmon, or Death Xmon as he's called over here. You essentially get this level 7 into play for free, so long as you have 5 things in the discard pile with Dex in its name, and since it's on deletion effect, I do believe it counts itself. So while this is in play, so long as you have 4 things, so let's say you have 2 Dexdorugoramons and 2 Dexdorugoramons in there, once he gets deleted, if you had a Dexmon in there as well, you could just play him for free. And then, of course, Dexmon on play, he essentially wipes your board if your opponent only had things that are level 5 or less, because he'll de-digivolve and then pop all the level 4s. And then, of course, now your opponent has to deal with, at the end of their turn, all of their Digimon with the lowest play cards are just going to keep getting deleted over and over again. And we all know how oppressive that could be. So, in terms of the Dex engine and everything, once we go on to the Tamers, Cool Boy, definitely self-explanatory for any X-Antibody deck. Cool Boy is probably the reason why you'll actually be netting way more memory than you'll ever pay for whenever you Digivolve into a Death X Digivolution, because once you suspend him, he gives you memory, he draws you cards, and keeps everything going. And on top of that, even though we're not running the X-Antibody option in this deck, he's still a 2-cost searcher for basically nearly anything in the deck that's not Metal Impulse, Breath of the Gods, or Coda, essentially, or our one of Hybrid. And then that brings us to Coda. So originally I had Yuji in this slot because, everyone loves Yuji for X-Antibody decks. But I realized for this deck, or at least this archetype, Coda works wonders because he, not only is he a memory tamer, of course, you could easily search him off of the Dorumon we went over earlier, and he also just searches for cards with X-Antibody in his traits. Coda is honestly the whole reason why we could just get away with running 11 rookies easily, as well as only around 10 champions, because just nearly everything in this deck, for your opening hand at least that you'll actually be playing, just searches or gives you some card advantage in some shape or form. And now in terms of the options, the first option I wanted to go over here was Death X Digivolution, because you'll notice that it actually has X-Antibody in its traits. So essentially you can actually search this option. Like if you reveal this option off of any of your searchers, it actually won't be a whiff. And off of Cool Boy, you can actually pick this up, and you could pick any X-Antibody Digimon up, because Cool Boy specifies add 1 option card with X-Antibody in its traits, not the X-Antibody option itself, like most other cards would do. Like I think Gabumon X and Agumon X do that. But yeah, basically this option, it's free so long as you have any Digimon with X-Antibody in its traits, and it also allows you, well, this is Metal Impulse showing right now. We'll get to that later, but Death X Digivolution, it basically enables you to Digivolve any card with Dex or Death X or whatever from the trash for its Digivolution cost. So most of the cards I went over that say, oh, if this Digimon Digivolves from the trash, that's basically what it'll help trigger, because sometimes, let's say if I'm bricking on Dorugramon and I need to go into Dexdorugoramon to pop a champion or something, and I have a Dorugamon out, I can still play Death X Digivolution to Digivolve into Dexdorugoramon from the trash. It'll be for 4, but I'll still be able to get those effects because he Digivolved from the trash, even though Dorugramon is not the immediate Digivolution under him. And we run that at 3 because I found that's just the sweet spot for that card. And let's see, for the next option, that'll be Metal Impulse. Even though a lot of the Digimon in this deck will be removal, we've seen this with most of the Dex line, Metal Impulse ended up being a lifesaver against matchups like Alphamon, because out of security, you get to trash up to 3 cards in your hand, and for each card trashed by the effect, you get to de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. I found that a lot of people kind of just easily forget that this card exists, and the fact that it has a 2-color requirement also kind of, makes people shy away from it a bit. But the fact that you get to, one, decide how many up to 3 cards you get to trash, you get a lot of control and flexibility in terms of how far you want to de-digivolve something, as well as how many things you actually want to put in your trash, which also fuels Dexdorugoramon. And then there's the de-digivolution. Most of the time, Alphamon players will keep the Doraemon egg within their stack when they return up to 7 of their sources to their deck. And so in mid-swing, the moment I de-digivolve them to the egg, let's say I de-digivolve them twice and then it's into Doraemon, that Doraemon can't survive even if they have the Dorugoramon protection, and that's an Alphamon down. And if that wasn't enough, afterwards, you can then delete a Digimon that's level 4 or lower. So that's more removal consistency for anything that's low cost or low to the ground. And then, last but not least, we're just running one Breath of the Gods. Decided to put this in here because, one, of course, out of security, it just shuts down any attacks. And with the whole BT-9 meta, it's a OTK meta, as we all know, and it could just stop it right in its tracks. So there's that. But then there's giving it reboot and protection from any DP-based removal. I noticed going against Melga, I would often get bounced as well. And so Breath of the Gods also protects from that. And it also protects from just hitting Mega Death in security, because I know that usually got annoying when I played any other deck. But for this one, seeing Breath of the Gods at 1 is pretty handy because, we don't want it to whiff too much off of all of our searchers, because this doesn't have X anybody in its traits. And with all that being said, that is essentially the entire deck. It feels very fun to play. There's definitely a lot of scenarios where you have to think pretty hard, especially when sometimes you'll have to Metal Impulse, but you still need that purple source, so you need to go into a Dex Digimon for it. But the memory control feels very, very clean, and that's essentially the deck. Now, for the future, when Dorugoramon gets hit, right now I'm kind of debating between Hisia Ryumon, which is basically the level 5 from the Ryudomon line, and in BT-10, if Dorugoramon, if it gets hit over here for the English release, I'm also considering Skullbaluchimon, which is another X-Antibody and an Undead Digimon, which will be relevant for its own effect, because when you trash him, you get to Digivolve into an Undead or Dark Animal by paying its Digivolution cost, and all of the Dex Digimon are all undead, so they'll all be able to trigger for that. But just be careful, because their regular forms are all Beast Dragons, I believe, so they won't trigger. So we'll have to do some testing with that. But otherwise, that's the deck tech.
I just had a quick question. Why not play Black Memory Boost for Surgeons?
So Black Memory Boost is an awesome option. The only reason why I didn't go Black Memory Boost and just opted for Coda was just because, mostly in the local meta and everything, I think people were playing a lot of memory blockers. So once I used Black Memory Boost to search, it's good that I got the search off, but now it would oftentimes be sitting there. And if they play multiple blockers and I'm not going into Dorugoramon yet, and I get slowed down that way, I won't be able to pop everything as fast as I would want to. But with Coda, I'm guaranteed to be at 3. And normally, whenever I am just at 3, that's all I need. Because then, if I have a Cool Boy in play also, I can just start ramping up from there, as opposed to having to just start from 1 or 2 every time. But Black Memory Boost is still a pretty good option, though. It really just depends on how many memory blockers you're seeing in your meta.
I was just curious about that because I was actually going to ask you about how do you deal with memory blockers, and you kind of just destroyed my question, which is kind of funny. But thanks, man. I think that's all the questions I have, actually. You explained it very well. You actually taught me a few things, like this Dexdorugoramon dying and then getting a Death X back is kind of just insane when you think about it. It's just like... it never really dies. You can't bounce it because of Breath of the Gods, and it gets 2 checks on like a 15k plus body. It's just like Jesus, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's because it's like you already know in the next set, a lot of people are going to be playing like, hey, you can reduce this any like no one can reduce play costs type of rookies like Psychmon and Solarmon, and so it's like, well, why not just ignore the play cost entirely, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, yeah, you got that going. So, thank you, very much for your explanation,
Oh
Kaze.
yeah, not a problem.
I appreciate you coming out today, man. That's going to do it for our deck profile today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later. Peace.
Yep, be sure to like and subscribe.
Be sure to like and subscribe.